Hello, viewers. Today, I would like to talk about a very good resource that I have developed personally for the use of Final Fantasy VIII players, in particular those who believe that Rinoa is Ultimecia. Now, this is a subject that I've talked about a great deal on this channel. Many people who may be critics of this, I would like to say, as I always do in these videos, that Yoshinori Kitase has retracted his statement about it. That was about, 5 or 6 years ago at an event regarding Dissidia NT. That was an interview. You can find it on YouTube or even me talking about it in a video on the channel. A lot of resources, such as blogs and WordPress sites that had information that particular believers of this idea had. A lot of those oftentimes, especially private websites, not so much the WordPress websites, because a lot of those are still around unless people delete them. A lot of people who believe that Rinoa was Ultimecia had moved a lot of their content to private websites that of course they have to pay for, and WordPress sites. A lot of these are over 20 years old. Very old. A lot of these websites and old blogs are very old. And so, for those of us who are thinking about this, who want to preserve information, that is very important. But I think what is also important is to create new information and resources for people who want to play this game this way. In the interview regarding Dissidia NT and Rinoa is Ultimecia, that idea, Yoshinori Kitase made special mention of Katsushige Nojima. If you have been watching this channel, you know why. You can see that, in Final Fantasy Mobius, that Katsushige Nojima was a main writer for, as well as Dissidia NT, with Rinoa having, as you can see, the Apocalypse spell. Katsushige Nojima, although he is secretive and does not really commentate on, he doesn't really talk much about his method, his story writing. He is more a man who is secretive in his writing. He no longer talks about stories that he writes on Twitter, for example, because of harassment. So he is this man, he keeps his methods and secrets in the way he writes to himself, because he has received some bad responses. And so he needed to do that, or he felt he needed to do that. If you know about my channel, it really does explore what Katsushige Nojima, the projects that he has worked on, especially in the way in which he is sort of the main writer for. Now, regarding all this Rinoa's Ultimecia belief stuff, I think we can give special credit to him, as I've said previously. But anyhow, let us get started to really talking about this new Occult Fan Magazine that I've created for the use of all Final Fantasy VIII players. What this is, what I'm going to show you, is something that many of you have seen in the videos before. It is a PDF file that you can use to basically keep track of information. I am going to be releasing different editions of it. It's going to have all manner of information, observations, talk about potential influences in the writing. In some cases, these influences in the writing are very clear, and I think they are important to understand the story to an even greater degree, especially things regarding symbolism, character names, all types of things like that. I really do want to continue to explore such subjects. Now, I think I can go and show you now. This is it. It's basically a PDF file. Right now there are, and I call this the new issues compilation. This is new issues of the Occult Fan Magazine. I really like playing on the game idea of basically we're sort of continuing in the spirit of the sort of magazine in the game. And the magazine in the game was very secretive. The magazine in the game was how you learned about the Doom Train ring, about the alien type creature that you can find. The Occult Fan Magazine was very interesting and fun. And I think this new Occult Fan Magazine is going to sort of revolve around, this is going to help you as you're playing the game to really enjoy the secretive aspects of Final Fantasy VIII, and hopefully, my hope is that it will help you appreciate the writing all the more. Without further ado, let's talk about the issues. The issues are about all manner of subjects. Hopefully I can, add more and release a whole new edition. Right now, this is the second edition. I happen to give the first edition of the Occult Fan Magazine, these new issues, to a viewer of the channel who wrote a fan fiction for one of my, for the Final Fantasy Rinoa is Ultimecia subreddit. I would have to say that right now we have 26 editions. How do you search through it? You may be wondering. I mean, it's so big. How do you navigate such a big magazine? I mean, it's not that big, but it's about 35 pages, images, quotations from different books about occultism, books about symbolism, books about magic, all manner of images basically to look at, to observe, to come to an understanding of different concepts that have been used in the game dialogue, highlighted areas for emphasis, things like that, things that could really help you as you're going, as well as personal observations from me, based on what I have learned and really observed in the story. Opinions, all of this is just together in a very organized fashion. I used a lot of emojis in it because I really wanted to sort of help emphasize some concepts, and I think sometimes if you're kind of a visual person like me, you kind of like that, it makes it easier to read. All types of, subjects that we don't often think about. We have symbolic stuff about the moon. What does the moon represent? What's the sun represent? Lights in general, like stars, their connection to angels, Squall's tears. I have a big observation about that. All of this I hope to expound upon. We have the idea of, we have the whole dynamic of Quistis as the third wheel. Basically she wants to get with Squall, she can't get with Squall. She has sort of an unrequited love, so to speak. Now she says, it's because I was acting like a big sister when at the orphanage, but you can tell, no, she's the third wheel, and the person who likes her is a person in the Treepy fan club. Treepy number one. Treepy number one likes likes Quistis, but he can't get with Quistis because Quistis, she doesn't even recognize the fan club that literally is formed on her, to sort of admire her. And Quistis has so many people in love with her, and it's just funny that, just obsessing over her. But Quistis herself is kind of, she just ignores them. She doesn't, she doesn't give them any attention at all in the game, especially her number one fan, Treepy number one. Whereas Quistis, you can tell Quistis is flirting with Squall even in later portions of the game. You can just tell that it's you can just tell that if Squall were to get with her, she would absolutely, Quistis, if she could get with Squall, she would get with Squall. Even in the later portions of the game, it's hinted that, Quistis is, even though she says, oh, it's, the reason I kind of acted like, I don't know. She said something. There's some quotations, but you can tell that's the dynamic in the story. That's an observation of narrative elements. I really like to do that sometimes. I want to expound upon the significance of the moon in Final Fantasy IV and Final Fantasy VIII. I want to do more. As I replay the game, I want to think more about how monsters can use magic, how monsters come from the moon, what is the significance of that. I have that observation. We have hypnotism. I want to also sort of analyze the hypnotism that Ultimecia uses as well. I treat these issues that I kind of release as standalone. So I'm just going at one point at a time. We have the idea of psychic attacks and how, Ultimecia was able to break down Seifer's mind with suggestion. She was able to say, oh, you're a little boy, and really bully Seifer into following her. Seifer was resisting. Seifer didn't want to follow her at first. But, that was very interesting, too. I want to do more research into that and release more issues regarding that. We have Rinoa's Griever Ring. I want to talk, I did a whole analysis of what that kind of dynamic in the story is. Rinoa wanted her own Griever Ring crafted, and she never got it crafted, but she keeps Squall's Griever Ring throughout the whole story, and you fight a whole nother Griever, completely different Griever, which is weird. I talked about the significance of that. The Mensor duels is a type of German type of duel that was very popular in Germany, where it's kind of a sparring match with swords. You fight with swords, and back in those days, if you were German and you got scars from it on your face, they considered this to be a matter of great honor. Men would say, hey, you need to get into a Mensor duel and get a token of honor. You need to get a scar. And so having Squall and Seifer fight in a bloody duel, having their faces scarred like that, it means something in Germany. And Japan, of course, this game was made in Japan. The Japanese nation was an Axis power, and they were allied to Germany. And so what you may realize in Japanese media is that many German things and many German cultural concepts are often used. They show these things in a lot of Japanese media as well. So when you have Squall, it's bloody. It's a bloody scar. It's a bloody cut. It's a real scar across his face. So for Squall and Seifer, you have to, if you take this in the concept of the old German Mensor duels, no, this is a matter of great honor to have a scar like this. And you can tell Squall and Seifer, they don't really have a problem with these scars on their faces. They're very, if anything, it seems like the scars don't really affect their personalities at all. It's almost like, it's just a normal thing. And this is kind of a normal thing in the culture. of Final Fantasy VIII, and I would say that is because this was a normal thing in Germany during the period of time where swordsmanship and fighting with swords was very it had made a big resurgence, so to speak, and people and it had always been there, but to get a scar on your face with a sword was something considered to be manly. You have to get scarred. You have to get scarred with a blade, you know, in a sword fight, okay? And with these gun blades, it's sort of the same idea. Getting scarred with this big sword, you know, is something honorable. It's not something that they say, oh, this is terrible, my life is, you know, I'm gonna get you, Seifer, for cutting me on the face. No, for them, it's a manly thing to have these scars. And so, how do you research with this? Because I have so much information, let me show you how you do it. If you have a PDF viewer, like, I forget what this one is called. I really do. This PDF viewer is called, I forget what it's called, but you can find a lot of them. Up here, you're going to have the find button. What you're going to do if you want to find something, you're going to highlight it. I'll show you how easy this is. You're going to highlight it, and you're going to highlight an issue. An issue is going to be associated with the whole subject, and you're just going to put it in. Once you put it in, you're going to push enter, and you're going to go right here to what you want to see. Now, we were talking about Squall, Seifer, and so forth. You know, he really inspired Squall and Rinoa. You know, so let's read that. So, you know, this was in Dolet, and Squall saith, you know, it's a good opportunity to test out my training. Thanks to you, I feel like I can take on anyone, even if they do fight dirty like you. Okay? So, you know, in other words, Squall is, in a way, Seifer kind of builds him up. Seifer's 18, you realize. Then we have Rinoa. She says, I really liked him. He was always so full of confidence and smart. Just by talking to him, I felt like I could take on the world. So, Seifer inspires Squall and Rinoa to greater heights, to an extent where they feel, Squall feels, he said, I can take on anyone. Rinoa feels like, I can take on the world. Well, if you believe that Rinoa is being hinted at to become the future Ultimecia, well, you say, well, that's what Ultimecia did. Ultimecia took on the world. So, you know, this is a very big point. This is a very big point for those of us who believe that Ultimecia became, you know, that Rinoa, became Ultimecia. And there's all types of symbolism regarding Seifer, the cross symbol. What does the cross mean? You can go to Jung. And this is noted in a book called Dictionary of Symbols by J.E. Serlo. And he says the cross is a symbol of fire. So, you know, Bailey stresses the fire symbolism of the cross. There's all types of things here in this Occult Fan Magazine. I hope you use it. It's free of charge. This is for the community. There's all types of things to talk about. There really is. I thought that I took the time to go into details about certain things like the promise that Squall and Rinoa make. That was very interesting. I take screenshots. I make sure these articles are kind of self-contained to an extent, and I can sort of expound upon the point, show you the quotations, go into detail. Some of that information is repeated, reviewed, and scrutinized to a high degree, and that's sort of my point. You know, so for Adia, talking about 13 years ago, we here in the Occult Fan Magazine, we're looking at the symbolic significance of 13. Everyone knoweth, most people know of Friday the 13th. 13 can represent bad luck. So here, what this is it's also about knowing, narrative things, knowing these things can enrich your enjoyment of the narrative. And just reviewing what the characters say. I really like this format of producing a PDF style magazine in much the spirit of the Occult Fan Magazine. And we look at things like, the parallel in the narrative between Julia's tragic love for Laguna, who never returned to her, and Ultimecia. She's in a castle overlooking the Promised Meadow, an orphanage area in the central region where Squad Rinoa promised to reunite. Well, if Rinoa is the one who becomes Ultimecia, that makes sense. She's waiting too. And Squall never comes. Just like Laguna, his father, like, the son is like the father. You have that narrative idea. I really like that because he does the same thing, in some type of future that, perhaps he didn't intend, just like Laguna. So there's a lot of ideas here to work with, and I hope this can really be something that everyone who plays Final Fantasy VIII can benefit from, but especially for those who, like me, believes that Rinoa becomes Ultimecia. Just about most of the subjects that I've talked about are in that magazine, and I hope to add on to it over time. Every time I do, what I plan to do is to do a video informing you that I've released a new edition of the Occult Fan Magazine, the compilation series. The new issues compilation series of the Occult Fan Magazine. If you have any ideas as viewers, please tell me, because if you want, I can actually put those ideas into this Occult Fan Magazine. I even have an academia link for this Occult Fan Magazine. So, it's literally on the website Academia. So I want to preserve this. A lot of information is being lost, I think, due to link rot in time. As time goes on, you have websites and blogs and private websites where people had recorded their ideas and their belief about Rinoa being Ultimecia. Some of this stuff is very old. Some of this stuff is over 20 years, in some cases 30 years, it depends on how long it has been. Not 30 years, but a lot of it is, people had started some of this stuff like 2001, 2002, okay? People have been creating blog websites and other things like this because whenever they go on the forums, people are really sort of mocked for believing that Rinoa is Ultimecia. People saying, what are you talking about? Well, it's just like I've said. Yoshinori Kitase has already said he cannot speak for all of the writers, and he's already saying that, Katsushige Nojima does some pretty strange things in the writing that he can't account for, and he's not going to try, and he completely retracted the statement. So all of this information is stuff to keep into account when you're talking about this game with other people who may disagree with you. You should all, be respectful to each other, because in order to enjoy this game, I think you have to appreciate even the small details of the story. And I think for those of us who believe Rinoa is Ultimecia, we often talk about aspects of the story that other people don't. So even if you may be of the contrary opinion to us, you can still gain a lot from knowing why things are the way they are in the story. What narrative details are influenced by what's the significance of it. I did a whole section, for example, where I talked about the design of Ultimecia. I talked about that in my last video. I do recommend that you watch it, viewers. It was very interesting. It had to do with a person who wrote a fan fiction for this channel, but I also talked about different subjects as well. Regarding the Ultimecia and Adia designs, there is a lot to talk about regarding those designs, and it was very much a great pleasure to go into books and to really talk about the moon and the spiral symbolism, the horn symbolism, the bull symbolism. You can see obviously Rinoa's horns are a bull. I went into a whole subject based around that. She, using the dictionary of symbolism, okay? In other words, the bull symbolism, the horns of a bull are related to a lunar crescent. This is a game that highly references the moon. You have the spiral shell of a deer, spiral shells of snails and other creatures. The spiral is related to the moon, okay? And the spiral is also related to the shell, of course. It's a symbol of water and the vulva. A deer has that symbolism, okay? She has the spiral symbolism. She has the three horns that curl somewhat in a spiral aesthetic. The spiral is a big, with Ultimecia's designs and what she wears, you can tell Ultimecia she's really focused on moon symbolism. Now, if you look at the spirals and the three horns can also represent sort of they can represent a lot of things. But, I mean, the very fact that they're spiral, very interesting. But also, they're on the left side. The spirals are on the left side. The left side is called the sinister side, the sinistral side. And it's often considered harmful, unfavorable, adverse. So, witchcraft, especially witchcraft that is in the category of what may be called black magic, is often associated with the left, whereas witchcraft that is considered to be beneficial, and even, if you read into certain, books that even talk about religions, like, Christianity is technically white magic, and in other words, witches consider white magic to be beneficial type magic, healing type magic. Black magic is considered to be destructive type magic associated with the left. And so the moon is considered to be in contrast with the sun. The moon, especially the dark moon, is considered to be associated with black magic. So it's all very interesting. All of these subjects I hope to cover, to talk about in detail. I have a lot to talk about. I know a lot about symbolism, and I happen to know a lot about witchcraft, and I can tell you for a fact that those who made Final Fantasy VIII, when they made this story about witches, they knew a lot about witches, they knew a lot about magic, they knew a lot about symbolism. I can prove all of this. I can literally reference other real books about the subject, and I can tell you where those influences come from. I can go into numerology, all types of things, the numbers used, the symbols used, all types of decisions that were done in the story. I can really expound upon those things. And I think that, of course, this is the Occult Fan Magazine, so I have to live up to the tradition that was in the game of really giving you something secretive that you would not know. This is not some Ultimecia Ultimecia was a big magazine. It's third party. There was a viewer on my channel who was responding to someone who was bringing up the Ultimecia magazine, and what they were saying to this person is what I agree with. The Ultimecia magazine happened to expound upon some lore, but the problem with that is that it's third party, and unless a writer themselves, because there were three writers, The writers do not even all really necessarily agree and even know all of the thought processes of the other writers. This is proven based on what Yoshinori Kitase said. Yoshinori Kitase, when he was asked again about Rinoa being Ultimecia, he says, wait, I retract my statement. I can't speak for the other writers. And he also says, actually, Katsushige Nojima does some interesting things, like in Final Fantasy X-2, you know, he made a whole connection between Shinra and, you know, Shinra from Final Fantasy X-2 to the Shinra of Final Fantasy VII. And he just says, I don't know what he did. I can't speak for him. I completely retract this statement. The importance of him doing that is to show that the writers work differently. The writers have different intentions and ideas. And so when we say Rinoa is Ultimecia or Rinoa becomes Ultimecia, we have a lot of reasons to do it. And, you know, if you want to see my reasoning, what I have discovered, especially even in games that Katsushige Nojima has wrote for, like Dissidia NT and Dissidia Mobius. If you want to see some of the scenes in that, I've reviewed a little bit of I've reviewed the intro scene in Mobius that heavily implies that Rinoa is Ultimecia, heavily plays on the connection between Rinoa as Ultimecia. And when you consider this isn't just some random writer, this is Katsushige Nojima, who wrote for Final Fantasy VIII and made the Liberi Fatali anagram, which was a secretive anagram in the song. He's the one who did that. Katsushige Nojima, it's not some big mystery that Katsushige Nojima likes to put secrets in stories and even songs. Katsushige Nojima is known for that. So it's no surprise Yoshinori Kitase is saying, hey, I want to be hands off on that. I don't know what Katsushige Nojima did. And he's not going to speak on it because it's just too, you know, he already knows how good Katsushige Nojima is and how professional of a storyteller he is. He doesn't want to say what he doesn't know. So that's why, you know, Yoshinori Kitase, he's a very smart man. He's smart because he knows, wait, the other two writers, I know they do things differently than me. So, you know, Yoshinori Kitase is a man I have a great deal of respect for. Ever since I learned, you know, I watched that video, saw what he said in the interview, I said, yeah, Yoshinori Kitase, this guy is he's actually a good person at this company. Because he's willing to give respect for the creative decisions of his fellow writers. As I was saying, this is something for the benefit of all. I hope all of you benefit from it. What else was I saying? Because I was in the middle of saying something. I can hardly remember. I'm talking about so much. Maybe I did sort of express the point I wanted to make. Okay. I had something I wanted to say, I think, but I am having a hard time remembering what I wanted to say, and I'm not even lying. There was a viewer who, yes, I was talking about the Ultimecia. One moment, viewers, I have to do something really quickly. One moment. Okay, I just had to clear my throat out. Anyhow, there was a viewer who was on my channel and they were talking about the Ultimecia magazine. Actually. And so okay, I have to sign in. I have to sign in. I'm not gonna put in my password to sign in my YouTube account right now. But anyhow, there was a user, they were saying, hey, everything you're saying is good, but there's a guy named Fuzzfinger Gaming, and Fuzzfinger Gaming is saying that in the Ultimecia magazine, they kind of say that, well, they have details like, oh, well, they're saying that Ultimecia took, Griever out of Squall's mind and so forth, which we never see. It's not in gameplay. That she's not using a draw, even though she draws Apocalypse from her own body. She's not, so there's what we see, and there's something in the Ultimecia magazine. And the Ultimecia magazine is third party. The Ultimecia magazine is not, they're, the writers of the game. The writers of the game did not, they're not, unless there are quotations from the writers from the game, everything in the Ultimecia magazine is completely third party. That's why you have people like Yoshinori Kitase retracting statements and telling you specifically about the writers. Hey, well, what about Katsushige Nojima, my good friend who, does interesting things? I can't speak for him. You see how careful he is to basically not discount something? He had to take back his words because he said, I have to be careful. That's how sensitive this whole subject is. So when you talk about Ultimecia magazines, what I like about my Occult Fan Magazine is that it is a whole different thing. The Ultimecia magazine was mostly about gameplay. There were things about the lore, but it was mostly, the Ultimecia magazine was one of those things that back in those days, these games were very difficult to play. And so if you bought something like an Ultimecia magazine, it was something that Square was developing, a third-party resource that you could use as a player. And, as far as I know, the first one was only in Japan. But you see, back in those days, not everyone had internet. You had to go through the game and play and experience a lot that you didn't know anything about. It's very hard. It's very hard for you to play through the game and not have a wiki, not have a resource. Today, if you're playing through Dark Souls, you can just go to the wiki. You can learn everything. Or you can go to Game Facts. You can learn everything you need to know. Back in those days, 1999, early 2000s, I, for one, my family had dial-up internet. Later on, people would get cable internet. But you see, in the early days, hey, a lot of people did not have internet. In the early 2000s, even today, there's a lot of people who don't have internet. So can you imagine how hard it was to play these games when you didn't have a resource? Especially in Japan during that time. Now, of course, we all know that, today Japanese internet is widespread. It's really fast. It's known for its speed, but, today, it's different. Back in those days, you bought an Ultimecia magazine because, you could hardly understand where to go. Final Fantasy VIII was a difficult game, especially when you wanted to find the White Seed ship in the later part of the game, the Central region. Very difficult, very hard to find that. So, strategy guides were very significant. A lot of people were making use of them because people were just having a difficult time playing the game. Not to mention the fact that, as far as, for example, Ultimecia was really just a strategy guide that also played into lore. The problem with Ultimecia is that it was third party, not to mention the fact that the writers themselves, as far as I know, and this is my standard, and you can use this for anything, unless the writers are directly saying it. Unless the writers are directly saying something, you can't take that, or you can take it seriously, but here's the problem. unless the writers are directly saying something, you don't know the intentions behind their writing and what story they made. That's why when you have 3 writers, when you have all of them putting their personal touches in the story, just like Yoshinori Kitase said. Yoshinori Kitase literally said, we all put our own personal touches to the script. They all had their own ideas. So, Ultimanias are not, no. Ultimanias are not as good as some people like to claim they are, because they're not directly from the writers. They're third party. Everything is really in general in it. You're not getting whole elaboration from these writers. Something's written in the Ultimania, you don't even know in most cases which writer it's coming from, if it even came from one of the 3 writers. Because it's just a big, vague collection of gameplay hints, and as well as different things in the story. But they're all mixed together with gameplay hints. That's because Ultimanias were strategy guides. Final Fantasy Ultimanias were strategy guides, and it should make everyone think a lot. The fact that Yoshinori Kitase was willing to retract something and not state something definite about Rinoa is Ultimecia, because he has to, you see how careful he was about that. He says, I have to take everybody, I have to take Tetsuya Nomura's writing into account, I have to take Nojima's writing into account. Now, for me, based on what I already know that Katsushige Nojima wrote for Final Fantasy Mobius. For those of you who have not played Final Fantasy Mobius, they have a whole DLC type, expansion to the game with Ultimecia, Squall, and all of that, okay? And so Katsushige Nojima put some strong hints. If you know anything about Final Fantasy Mobius, you already know how much writing Katsushige Nojima did for it. So a lot of people were talking about Final Fantasy VIII. They don't even know much about games like Final Fantasy Mobius. They don't even talk about the fact that Katsushige Nojima wrote for Final Fantasy Dissidia NT and gave, and Rinoa has the Apocalypse spell in Dissidia NT. And who's the main writer? Katsushige Nojima, the same person that Yoshinori Kitase says is so secretive. So, you're certainly going to be able to read my Occult Fan Magazine. I'm going to have links to it. What is this? It's not an Ultimania. It's literally a lore companion. It's a lore companion, a secret. It's a magazine with secrets, and you could call it, occult means secret. So of course, this magazine is for the occult fans. This magazine is for the enjoyment of Final Fantasy VIII as a game. I am really happy about this. I hope you enjoy this. I would like to say, may you be blessed, and farewell, viewers.